Welcome back, Dragon Ballers, to Get the Mic, the only show where your host on the left, Owl,
And your host on the right, Brock.
dissect fiction for its mythological significance. In this episode, we are talking about Dragon Ball as usual, and in particular, we're talking about Dragon Ball episode 67, which is called The End of Commander Red or Commander Red Perishes. Either of those.
Exclamation mark.
Yes. And so we're going to see what that's all about. Before we start, give us a subscribe if you like what you hear. Give us a like. We do upload every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday to YouTube, and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to Rumble. I think we're also going to have a new Myth and Movies coming out this month, so stay tuned for that.
Oh, it's going to be exciting.
And we're going to have some updates to the channel. I think we are. I think it will happen that way. So we hope you guys enjoy those. We'll kind of leave it a surprise because I think it is going to please our audience. Anything else before we start, Brock?
No, I'm just excited to get into what the topic of this episode is. Oh,
The topic, the thing, and it's kind of
the point of all of this, right?
Yeah, kind of what we've been beating around the bush with about the whole what is the Red Ribbon Army, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also why the first episode is named Pilaf and the Mysterious Force, Mysterious Army. It's already instantiated that way. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we see is Goku fighting against the Red Ribbon Army. Still, he has, or it's kind of that recap, and he's already destroyed many of the soldiers, and he's been shot at to no avail. And so he's in this like last tower where Red is, and he is finishing off these soldiers.
I do want to point out, whenever he comes in here, he could just go straight for the Dragon Ball, right? But he came here specifically wanting to beat these guys up. So rather than just skipping past it, right, and just going on his journey to the Dragon Ball, he specifically lands in the base and immediately engages the first soldiers he sees, right? We don't
He doesn't
see
even
him
land before he engages them.
We
He
don't even see
kills
him
some of
start.
them in the sky
Yeah.
before he even starts. Yeah, and so it's true. And one of the biggest points that Goku is beyond their comprehension is at this point here when the soldiers start fleeing from him and they say he is a monster. They drop their weapons and they start running away. And Red says he refuses to let this army be beaten by a kid, a lone child. But it doesn't really matter at this point. Morale has totally collapsed.
Right. He's a monster. And, he comes running in here with his tail and is immune to their instantiation of malice, right?
As weak as it is, but as numerous as it is, right?
Right.
It's all these modes of being that are insignificant to Goku at
right.
this point.
It's establishing this as a magnitude above. So no matter how much you multiply that malice, it doesn't stand up to this mode of goodness, right?
And also that Goku knows that he's pretty much won already.
It's a foregone conclusion.
That is also something that's made pretty clear here, is that Goku knows he outclasses every single one of these soldiers.
Right. And we see here also, he knows that he can sort of kick a projectile back at somebody, right? It's what he did with Tao, but specifically with these soldiers, he's treating them in a way where if they do anything towards him, he generally dodges it and then exerts his own force on them rather than, deflecting anything or, doing anything like that. It's very straightforward, right? He's allowing them to take their shots at him and responding immediately, right?
And so when he dodges a rocket launcher,
Mm-hmm.
and they thought that he got him, that was like the point where the soldiers were just like, no, he's a monster. And that's to say
Yes.
that he has unsheathed his sword, right? He has accepted the malevolence of being itself because of Tao. And because of that, he's terrifying to the Red Ribbon soldiers.
It's a power, a magnitude above what they can interact with, right? And so interacting with it to them it's purely chaos.
And it's very chaotic, as we see. So that's pretty much where we're at as we begin to dive into this episode. So next, Goku is continuing to fight those soldiers on the, I guess, second level of the tower. He's trying to get through. He runs into a ceiling, and Red mocks him, and he says that it's made of a special alloy that he can't break through it. And as he looks on the monitor, Red, he sees that there's one soldier who's running towards Goku instead of away from him, and it's Colonel Violet. So he thinks that Violet is going to be able to fight Goku alone, but she actually goes to the vault and steals all his stuff instead. He's pissed at this, and there's an exchange between him and Black at this point. He jumps out of the chair and goes towards the door, and Black says that he can't go out there. And Red tells Black that she is after the vault. He's not going to just stand around, right? Black says, "But the boy is out there. You can't go out there right now. You have to be in safety." And so Red jumps on the table and he's like, "You can't talk down to me." It's an interesting
It's
moment,
hilarious.
yeah. Um, but he eventually does stay in the room. Now, this treasure, I want to say, is that's been accumulated, right, by fulfilling that fulfilling the necessities of envy, right? It's been being taken from other people and stored in this vault.
Right, hidden away just for status, essentially, to fund keeping p keeping control, right? And
Well, it's
it's
to say that envious nature is materialistic and is
yes,
it's rich in its materialism.
right. What it pays out in dividends, something that is fleeting, right? Something
Yeah.
that's material and that is not of spiritual value, you could say. And so he has accumulated what he thinks is wealth, right? But as we see, the loyalty that he hasn't earned ultimately is his undoing, right? Because if he had treated his people better, as we see, he's just abusive towards them in a sense, right? He
And well, he's
if he was
also
more
lost most of his best forces.
yeah, he's thrown them away for his own intentions, right? And so at the very end of it is one last person who's like, "Fucking get me out of here. I want to get my paycheck. I don't want to do this for you. You're getting everybody killed. Like I don't have this kind of loyalty, right?" And so that bond that he thinks he's earned is only material.
Well, that is yes. I agree strongly, but I also wanted to say that his whole power, his grasp on his power, has really been diminished at this point with his loss of the power of
Right, his
disgust and
power is
thuggery
the
and
extension of
his
himself.
tentacles, let's say,
Yeah.
yeah.
Rather than himself, it's sort of his power lies in his influence.
Exactly, and that is kind of what would be the projection of a manifestation of envy, right?
Right.
Would be that influence, would be the one that's envied instead of one that has to envy.
Right. That's kind of why I tied him in with propaganda before, right? It's like
Mhm.
that impotent spirit that is that is how would I say it wants to be taken more seriously than it can possibly act out. It takes itself so seriously that it's like the tyrant that kills the court jester,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because it sees I don't know, it sees itself as above everything else, right? And so can't see themselves realistically, right?
Mhm. Mhm. So, and we're going to get specifically into that in just a minute. So, Violet steals that away, and Violet we've also said is that she's a masculine female, right? She has short hair. First time we see her, she has like the cowboy hat on and all that. She chews bubble gum and kicks ass, right? She's all out of bubble gum. Well,
Mhm.
she uses the bubble gum to blow up the
It's very
vault.
much like Blonde Launch, right?
Right, she's the masculine, which it has to be her that rebels against Red because of Red's masculine tyranny, right? That's what
Exactly.
would arise out of it. To challenge him would be that masculine feminine. And it's interesting that
Well, you had said in the last
Blue is like
episode that
his
Mother
second.
Nature, right?
Yes. And Blue being like almost his second or his best general basically being the antithesis of that, we kind of see how Red has elevated his hierarchy, right? And so obviously Violet is going to be the one that has to steal from him, has to take the remaining value that he's garnered up. And
Right.
so she flies away.
Because she wasn't put in the proper place.
Yes.
She wasn't given the
She
proper
was
reverence, you could say.
there we go. That's a good way to
Whereas,
say.
right now, flying to this location
Well, not
is
only
the
that,
gang with Blonde Launch,
but
who's
remember
excited to come into this conflict as from loyalty, right? Because of an inner connection with,
but remember too that it is not Red that's upset with Violet and kind of treats her illy.
yeah, no, it's really black.
It's really Black. And that's significant because of what we're going to talk about in two times from now. We're so close and we're coming to like, oh, this peak, it's going to be so good. All right, so let's get to it. Having lost his fortune and Goku just on the horizon, Red runs into the elevator and tells Black that he will fight Goku and that he has to do everything he can to get the Dragon Balls. He'll wait for him, planning their strategy on the next floor.
That's right.
And
Now, I'm up on the next floor again, but you're not with me.
yeah, you're going to stay here. Yeah. And it's almost I'm going to talk about this again in just a second. But so Goku comes in, actually he he comes in through the side and he starts talking to Black like, "Are you the boss?" Black takes off his coat and stuff. He's like, "You'll fight me." And so they tussle for a bit, but it's clear that Goku is far superior to him as a fighter. So as they are, Red watches from above, planning their next move, right? And he takes the Dragon Balls as well up there. So here, I do just want to mention that Black, he does say that he won't it won't happen to him what happened to the other Red Ribbon soldiers, even though he basically gets trounced as well.
Easily.
And Goku also says to him, and I think this is probably because he is unarmed. He has no instantiation of malice on him. But he says to him not to fight Goku, that he'll get hurt. He's like, I don't want to fight you. You'll get hurt if you fight me.
Yeah, he's like, please don't obligate me to fight you based on my morality, right?
Hmm.
It's like I have established what is the good, and if you make me, I will strike you down.
Yes. And actually, right there, I like that shot of Red with the machinery lights on the back of his head. It's like that. Um, it again is that cold, calculating, envious nature that's acting in motion to drive his being forward. And what does he do with it? Is there anything else you had to say here? I just wanted to cover that he fights Black. Their fight doesn't last that long.
No, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything too specific about the way they
I will
fight.
say that Black being an instantiation of what he is unable to stand up to Goku is obvious at this point already. It's kind of reflexive, but we're gonna get to it. So let's
Well,
just go on.
so yeah, so he does kick him out the window, right?
Not
As
yet.
he trounces him.
I that's not yet.
Good.
Well, kind of. It's at the end of their fight, yes.
Hmm.
But at the end of their fight as well, Red has decided to use the ceiling to crush both of them. And as he does, he proclaims his victory. Now, Black is kicked out of the window, so he's still alive.
Does Goku do it in response to that?
No. Goku does it, and then the ceiling starts
Right.
falling. And Red then uses the elevator to go down. He doesn't actually have to go down. There's no point of him going down. But he goes down. And he proclaims that he is victorious. He finally got one over on Goku. And that he'll get the 4 Dragon Balls. He'll just have one more to grant his wish to finally increase his height, which is what we've been holding back this whole time. So Red's whole purpose is envious. His whole purpose is to be taller.
Right.
And and there's Black alive, but it's
Well, I don't think we know that just yet, though, because I think he confesses it originally to Black that he wanted his wish to be taller,
no,
right?
no, no. He's saying it as Black is hanging out the window, and Black hears it. Red thinks he's dead.
Oh, he overhears him say it?
Yeah. Red is talking to himself about how he's going to be taller. He proclaims his wish. And so, his wish to be taller is not only that envious part, but I'm going to get
Mhm.
into how it's even further than that. But we learn that the the eye patch Red wears, right? It's that wisdom gained is that he needs to be taller, apparently.
Well, that's his short-sightedness, you could say.
Pun,
He
no
doesn't have
pun
that depth
intended.
perception. It's great the way that sight ties into your ability to perceive the way that the world is, right? And he sees one-dimensionally in this sense. He's just like, "I need to be
But
taller."
what's worse is he's aware of it, and so he needs to elevate his sight, which is what Goku does in the Red Ribbon Army arc. So it's such a dual thing, right? It's
It's an
Goku,
inverted version of it, right?
yeah. It's the lesson that Red didn't learn that Goku has to learn to defeat Red, which is the elevation of one sight. And he's aiming at resurrecting Upa. I mean, Bora, Upa's father.
Yes.
Um, yes,
We always get them backwards.
I know. It sucks. And so, yes, and you're right. As Red is proclaiming that, Black it crawls up out of the window and confronts him. And he says, "Really, that's what you were going to wish for this whole time, right? To be taller." And this is where you were talking about when he
Mhm.
confronts him. And Red says, "Yeah, so what? I'm the commander. If I want to wish that, I can, right?" But he also says something significant. He says that he can conquer the world anyways without the Dragon Balls, but a leader has to be tall and looked up to, which is actually the wisdom that he's earned. He just had his road to get there is completely false.
Right, he's completely interpreted it
But to be yeah,
materialistically.
and
Yeah.
that's because he's envious, right? But it is that spiritual manifestation of bigness, let's say, that is to be admired. He admires it, but his path to get there is completely unholy because it's fueled on by envy to begin with.
Well, it's interesting as he follows Pilaf as a villainous character, where it's like we had this short, immature instantiation of adversarial nature and sort of selfishness, right, with Pilaf. But then now we see a more updated version of him in Red, who has
Oh, I
extended
don't know if I
himself
would
out.
say that he's an updated version of Pilaf, though,
No, I would say that it's like
because he's a
I would say
real
there's
adversarial
let me put
spirit.
it this way. There's a progression of those adversarial spirits as they grow into a bigger and bigger threat
Yes,
throughout the
I
series.
agree.
And
Yeah.
so I feel like he's a step after
Yes, he's
Pilaf, like a
definitely a step.
continuation of some of those
But
ideas,
I
as if it's like now here's an instantiation that's trying to become bigger, but it's
so
not bigger yet, right?
in in Dante's Inferno, the first realm of that is purgatory. No. Yes. It's a purgatory where the pagans are before Jesus was there. So they don't suffer in hell, but they're also not allowed to heaven, right?
Hmm.
So, oh yeah. So what I was wanting to say was that I don't even think Pilaf in that first season is an adversarial spirit in that way. He's more of a foolish adversary. He's like just at the cusp of
Hmm.
being an adversarial spirit, but there's no malice to him.
Right,
This is that, and it's not even envy because Pilaf is not driven completely by envy.
right. He's not, but there's you
But
could
I
think of the
agree, it's a
envy as a
step.
growing pain in becoming what malice really is, right? It's
Well,
almost like he wants to think of himself as this more embodied malice, but he can't just
well,
because of how small in spirit he is, so to
well,
speak.
we've already seen right that Tao himself was a more adversarial spirit than what Red is,
Right.
right? And we've seen that malice in and of itself is going to be superior in that unholiness
Hmm.
to, and there's tiers of it, to envy. And just like, I mean, I would say Dante's Inferno, there's tiers, right, of evil, let's say, of
Right.
adversarial spirits.
And definitely in a hierarchy of that instantiation, he's definitely underneath Tao, right?
Yeah,
It's
but
sort
he
of
is
like that's
above
why we've said
Pilaf,
that
which
it's
is,
a
I think, what you're saying.
yeah, and that's why we've said it's a foregone conclusion that Goku's going to come in here and beat Red, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I would look at him as a sort of a mid step between Pilaf and Tao, right? There's this sort of like it's a very foolish thing in the way that he has oriented himself, right?
In a way.
In a way,
In a
because
way, because
that's how he loses all of
he's
his
right
money,
in
right?
spirit, but he's wrong in not in like actuality. Because like
Right,
the idea that he needs to strengthen his spirit to be looked up to and admired is not a bad thing, but his manifestation of it as material is his flaw on it.
right. The fact that it has
And that's
no
kind of where he's
spine to it,
blind to,
right?
right?
Yeah.
And all okay, so that brings me to my next point, which is what black what black really represents. And I've been
Hmm.
holding this back the whole time too. Black really is the spirit of the Red Ribbon Army given birth, right? Now, he is Red's second in command because Red has manifested the Red Ribbon Army, right? But his black spirit obviously has to be tall because Red has manifested his idealized manifestation in the world, right? So
Right,
black is tall and black is everything that Red wants out of the Red Ribbon Army. He's disciplined, right? He's terse, all that stuff, and he's obedient to a T. And so,
it's like this is what you would do with it if you had what you want,
right,
right?
and so he's an instantiation of what the Red Ribbon Army represents, which is not a spirit of envy, right? It's more of a spirit of power. And that's what he wants because he wants to rule the world, right? More like what Pilaf wanted, but obviously the Red Ribbon Army has the malice to do it. We've already seen it happen somewhat.
Right.
And so
And there's that realization he has that it's like, oh, now I can do this.
he realizes he is the Red Ribbon Army more than Red. Red is a separate entity, right? Red is what was controlling the Red Ribbon Army, but the Red Ribbon Army is such that and it's such a collection of adversarial spirits that it is its own entity now, and it's basically embodied in black.
Right. And so it supersedes Red.
Yes, it supersedes and kills Red.
Yes.
The spirit of what is created by envy kills itself. And that's another
And
thing
is
too. And
replaced
think of
by
that envious nature, what that breeds, right? Um, and there's a lot of I suppose I would say, yeah, there's a lot of stories where that envious nature is what breeds the adversarial
just
spirit,
makes me
right?
think of Star Wars where it's like fear leads to anger, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
envy is an expression of that of a fear, right?
Hmm.
Ultimately. A fear of inadequacy in a
But
sense.
yeah, and that yes. And so the envy leads to a bigger adversarial spirit. We
Right.
see that manifest here in Black, and Black takes over. I think that pretty much brings us around. So now we have the filler portion. Everyone enjoy our filler discussion. I don't really have much to say here. Yamcha and the gang almost run into Violet. That's it.
I would say possibly if there was anything this scene was trying to say, I would say it's because Violet's on a collision course with Launch. Because they're like the same spirit in a sense. And the way that they go is the way that is it's like it's good that this spirit is fleeing away from Red and Red's influence. Because this needs to be protected from something like the red ribbon under black, right?
Mm.
And so I would say maybe Toriyama would be trying to say that this is a good path for her to be taking, like she's doing a good thing by taking this money away from what the Red Ribbon Army was about to become,
Point.
because those resources would lead to,
But
it's an impotent army that he's about to rule, right? They don't have any resources, right? How is he going to pay all of his people? He has to rely only on the ones who are as dedicated as him. So this is a self-destructive course,
well,
obviously,
yeah, I mean, well, he has some technology, still has the compound as far as we know.
and he
We're
has
gonna
his
see what
tools,
happens with that,
right?
yeah. But right, See, I was actually thinking the little analysis I have for this is that it when Violet heads on her course, right,
Hmm.
out of Red's clutches, she doesn't know Red's dead. Stealing his
Red's dead,
stuff,
baby.
right, and being that masculine female spirit, right. It is that they kind of have to there's kind of an exchange of spaces, right?
Hmm.
Where in the compound, the masculine female energy was manifest as Violet, but now it's going to be manifest as Launch, like you were saying. But
Right.
not only Launch, but Bulma's going to be there too. And I think Bulma is an important aspect to it as well because Bulma is the one who really
Has integrated
growth
launch,
with
right?
Blue and has integrated Launch during the time that Goku's been away in Korin lands. But
Right.
really, I mean, I don't think there's really too much to say here besides that.
Other than she's kind of like Bulma, right?
Yeah, she kind of like Bulma, a little like Launch.
Yep.
That's it. And then we finally get to the end, which is where Goku crawls his way up from the side of being crushed, bashing his way through the wall, and he comes up to the top and he sees Black there, and Black feigns a well, he doesn't really feign. I guess he offers an actual agreement for Goku and him to join forces and conquer the world together
It's all
with the
power.
Dragon Balls. All power, right? Because, like I said, that manifestation has turned into just that
Right, and
power.
he couldn't imagine that Goku would be doing this for a good reason, right? He's like, "You're trying to increase your power with
Yeah.
these Dragon Balls, right?"
And so he says, let's collect Dragon Balls together. We'll rule the world. And Goku says, no, I'm trying to revive Bora, Upa's father. Someone that you killed or your friends killed.
Mhm.
And so then Black says, well, forget about the Dragon Balls. Go to me anyways, as long as you team up with me and we rule the world together. And Goku says, no, I'm not doing that. Now give me the Dragon Balls. So uh, Black tries to use his pistol to shoot Goku, misses every time. Goku kicks him, gets the balls, and Black like curls over. What is that called? Like falls to one knee after getting hit by Goku
Mhm.
and realizes that he's not going to be able to do this like this. So he
Yeah,
gets
he
out the
immediately
capsule.
realizes that his instantiation is like, "Oh, hang on a
So he
second."
gets out exactly. He gets out a capsule and he does what a Red Ribbon soldier would do and is use the technology around him to his advantage. Summons a power suit, which he then punches Goku with, and it actually seems to do some damage. Now, remember, the Red Ribbon Army also made Major Metallitron, so it's not out of their complete foray to have powerful mechanized armaments.
Sure. I mean, think about like Ader,
Huge Ader.
Strong. So there's it was kind of interesting because I remember the first time I watched this, I was like, "Man, they're not as intimidating as I thought they were going to be." And then as soon as Black pulls out this mech suit, it's like, "Hold on a second." All of a sudden, the only thing here that's able to stand up to Goku just appears, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's even evident whenever you don't realize what he's doing here because what he's actually doing is just completely surrounding his body with the technology of the Red Ribbon Army. So as to
He's
say,
becoming, well, he's
he's
strengthened his spirit by killing Red.
he is the spirit inside the automaton that is
But
the
that's
Red
why it
Ribbon
has to
Army,
happen
right?
in this order. He couldn't use this before because he's only strengthened his spirit, which is synonymous with the spirit of the Red Ribbon Army, by killing Red, whose goals were not in line with what the Red Ribbon Army stands for. So now he's able to summon the power suit, which is a shell around him, which is a protection of the Red Ribbon Army to his physical form.
Right, and I think that that shell around him also is sort of like an extension of his manifestation of alignment, you could say.
Definitely,
He is
yeah.
aligned with the idea of the Red Ribbon Army, so in spirit he is actually much stronger than Red is. And so this spiritual thing that he has, right, this little seed of potential you
Seems
could
he's
call it,
even stronger than Tao. He
is
actually
it
smacked
manifests as
Goku
something
around.
that is like call it an exoskeleton, right?
Yeah.
It's a spiritual exoskeleton, so he's a much more difficult spirit to grapple with because he is actually embodied in that sense. He basically calls himself what he actually acts out, whereas like Red was constantly focused on what he wasn't, right?
And now it is what the red this is what the Red Ribbon Army is. It's power, right? And that's exactly what the power suit does. It shoots like lava beams, right? The power of nature being harnessed here that we see. And it is that instantiation of what the Red Ribbon Army stands for. It's that technology as well. And we've seen the technological um advances of the Red Ribbon Army, especially from seasons 1 and 2, right? I mean, Pilaf had the flying fortress, but the Red Ribbon Army has tons and tons and tons of resources and vehicles and bases and all that kind of stuff everywhere. And so the ultimate thing we see has all these weapons on it, has crosshairs on it, missiles, lava, right? And it is all of those things combined, right? To come into this one last gasp that's trying to protect the idea of itself, which is held and kept alive by Black himself. He's the only one left.
Ultimately, whenever you say 100% loyalty is the standard, you become an individual again. That's just power hungry.
There you go. Yeah.
So this is just Black at this point because, well, as we'll see, this it's not about anybody else.
No.
And I like the crosshairs, right? The way that, well, we've been talking about this already, right? The center, the crosshairs, the 4-star ball, the axis mundi, the point of focus. Whenever he starts attacking Goku with it, it keeps on showing the screen with the crosshairs like landing directly on Goku, and I think it's to show like he's oriented against Goku, right?
Yes.
That is his where he has
That's his
oriented himself,
aim.
right?
Yeah.
That is what he aims to do. Like that's his effect is ultimately going to be in that direction.
Well, and I think it's because it's kind of the opposite here. Red, because Red knew that he needed to elevate his aim. Black does not think he needs to elevate his aim. Instead, he lowers his vision and he looks down on Goku. And he looks down on the Red Ribbon compound, right? And he
Mhm.
subsumes the goal that
Yeah.
Pilaf had, right? He kind of regresses in that way. More powerful but less wise in that sense. And so he is aimed as the antithesis to Goku because Goku's aiming up and he is aiming down.
No, it's funny because whenever Goku met Korin, he was like, "Oh, you're short and you're fat or whatever," right? He looked down on him immediately, right? And so we see that Goku's mode of being now, he can act out as Korin, a spiritual master of actually what's happening here, in being able to be looked down upon, but at the same time be much bigger in spirit to show
Yeah.
that the humility that you have is one of your greatest assets, right? If not your greatest asset.
Mhm. One of them. I don't know about greatest.
Maybe not greatest, but it's pretty
Because
pretty
courage is
foundational.
a pretty virtuous
Sure.
thing. Anyways, so I think this pretty much brings us to the end. The very last thing we see is that Black aims towards Goku, and narrator comes on to say, "We'll figure out what happens next episode." So I guess we'll figure out what happens. Maybe Goku will just die, and it'll be the end of the
Maybe
show,
he'll just blow him up.
and that's it. The end of the show. All right. Well, if you liked what you heard, please give us a like, give us a subscribe. We upload Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday on YouTube. Give us a Rumble on Subscrumble. I mean, a Subscrumble on Rumble.
Give us a
Just
grumble.
subscribe. Give us some Rumbles too. We've actually been growing there. We got 144 Rumbles so far. So keep watching those videos. We upload those Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Anything else, Brock?
Man, they really like the Arale episodes.
I know it's so
The
strange.
like even on Rumble, the Arale episode just blew up. It just reminded me mentioning Rumble. But yeah, uh, I don't know if we have Arale fans out there, but comment if you like Arale. Maybe we'll check it
Especially
out
comment
sometime.
too, like if you like what we have to say about that particular filler part, because I think it is in the manga, but just not all of it.
Right.
Um, right, and so next episode, I think towards the end, because we do have to get to the last part of Black here, but I think towards the end we're going to be able to discuss the kind of the arc as a whole.
Right.
what the Red Ribbon Army story, and I think we really touched on it this episode already because we're talking about the elevation of one's aim, right? And that's kind of the entire thing that we get from Goku, right? We see the aims of in the first, let's say, Muscle Tower, right? We see that Goku's aim is directed towards honoring his ancestral spirit, right? And through
Right.
doing so, he's able to defeat thuggery, etc. Then we see in Blue, right, Bulma's aim, right? Bulma's aim is not at the right thing, but she still can grow and integrate through that process and is able to gain wisdom, right? And then we finally see Goku's turn at it with Tao and how he integrates his wisdom and reorients his aim upwards towards something even greater than what he can conceive of. And so we learn now finally at the end that Red had that wisdom, but he hadn't oriented himself in the proper way to achieve it. And so he was doomed to fail from the beginning.
I love the inversion because what Goku has learned from Korin is the pattern by which,
It's not just Korin, though. It's all these instantiations, right?
well, specifically, I want to put it this way, by he learns from Korin the pattern by which you can elevate yourself automatically instead of having to have a master, let's say, having to have a
Hmm.
specific master, but it's embodied, right? So he learns the
I don't
pattern of
know if I
being.
think that's how he learned because I would say he.
But in the inversion of that, just so that I can give the context, the inversion of that is Black, as his instantiation is throughout the Red Ribbon Army, which is that he's acting out a weak mode of being for something that he perceives to be higher in status or higher in the hierarchy than himself, right? So we have the empty expression of following a master for the sake of following the master as a sycophant, right? And then we have Goku who
Oh,
is
I like that.
learning
Yeah.
learning the pattern of being that makes you good, and by not following somebody but actually acting it out, right? By embodying it. So it's the opposite, right? And they're in a collision course.
Well, see, and that I was taking issue with. I don't think that Goku learned to elevate his aim by Korin. That was done because of Tao and him recognizing that the that ancestral spirit is something worth preserving, right? Because he doesn't even climb the tower before he orients his aim upward towards it. But I know what you're saying about the
I should
embodiment that
say
you can that
Korin being the master of Korin Tower is a representative of the wisdom you gain by climbing the tower. So since I'm kind of considering it that way, climbing the tower, like the pattern, the way that you do it, right? Like actually, it's like, oh, you actually climbed the tower, right? You actually acted in the proper way that would elevate you, um, let's say above the height of your master, right? You knew what was good about the way your master was, and you were able to go beyond their height by acting that pattern out, right? So it's
no,
like,
no, I know what you're saying too about like um blindly following black black is a blind follower, let's say, where Goku has learned not only the lesson of being able to map spirits onto each other and being able to understand that mapping Korin's spirit, let's say, of humility in this part is something to do, but he also learns to read Korin's spirit rather than his words because a
mhm.
lot of what Korin says is not what he does, right? And so, and
Right, he's deceptive
that's
in
a
the way that he
way,
represents things, right? He says like, "Oh, you can have it." And then Goku goes for it and he's
and
like, "If you can get it."
and that's a way that he's teaching Goku that the master is not someone to be blindly followed like Black. And I see what you're saying there on the
Yes.
collision course, yeah. And that's why, and that's another thing too. It's it's not Goku to kill Red because Red actually has gained more wisdom than Black. It's just articulated poorly. He understands that his vision needs to be elevated. Black does not. And so Goku is not going to kill Red for that
But instead
part.
it would be Black that would kill him, right?
Yeah. And so but it is Goku that has to fight Black now because like we were saying, there it's that the pupil spirit and how one should operate in accordance with those higher on the hierarchy to them.
Right, and he also kills that last shred of humility that he could represent, right? And so it sort of damns Black.
Yes. And so Black is here in hell of his own making.
Reigning in hell.
Here he is reigning in hell. Yeah. All right. I think that brings us
Yeah.
to the end. Sorry, we had to add that addendum in there so we could, I guess, wrap things up. But yeah, this was pretty almost done with the red ribbon part. And then we'll get into Goku's next journey.
Yes.
So I think that'll bring us to the end. Subscribe if you liked what you heard. Comment. We'd love to hear you. I'm your host on the left, Owl,
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
and we hope you guys have a good night.